Yeah, this isn't bad at all. I think this will work.
Looks great.
Yeah.
So on a clear day, looking that way, you can see Catalina Island and the northern Channel Islands. You can see Anacapa Island and Santa Cruz Island off that in that direction. This is Pepperdine University right up here. Remember Ken Starr who did the Clinton Whitewater investigation?
Is that here?
Well, after he finished that, he became the president of Pepperdine.
Really?
Yeah. So he was here for a number of years, and then there was some kind of a scandal, and he left. He was forced to leave Pepperdine. I forget where he ended up. He's a very conflicted individual.
It seems like it.
Yeah, he seems quite rigorous in his application of the law when it comes to Bill Clinton, but has a whole different standard for Donald Trump.
Yeah, politics are usually complicated.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, well, I guess, do you want to talk about, my experience with this sort of stuff?
Sure. You want to talk about this morning?
Yeah. So, for a little clarity and context, Chris and I went out to this reservoir, and really a cool, idealistic place, I think. It's just very peaceful and serene. The only other foot traffic there was, horseback and that sort of thing. And there's this nice little river there. I took some pictures of it. I'll put them up. Maybe superimpose them over this or whatnot. But, I ended up smoking, and it was definitely more intense than last time. And I started to, at least for me, I got very introspective. I got very, and not introspective in a way that is just limited to myself, but it's almost this unique perspective of who I was in this scheme of things.
Cosmic consciousness. Well, let's step back for a second.
Sure.
Let's just talk about the physical feelings first. So, how did you feel after one lungful, and second lungful, and third lungful? Just the physical effects.
I think for me, it felt similar to. There was a strong calming feeling, but before that happened, it was like once you inhale the smoke, it was almost the vapor. Sorry, once you inhale the vapor. Well, first of all, it burns the shit out of your throat. At least, for me, I was just like, God, that's terrible. But after that, you kind of get this sense of something, you've done something. It's almost like a sense of, I've taken some sort of step or something.
I feel like it's like a benign sedative, that first relaxation feeling.
That comes after. So it's
okay.
The best thing that I can describe it as is you get, remember when we used to, well, at least for me, but you mentioned it too, this sense of anxiety of impending doom or something like that. Take out the doom part of it. Mm-hmm. That, that pit in the feeling of your stomach.
Yes.
I felt that, but I didn't feel, it wasn't impending doom, it was impending something. There was some sort of finite moment that kind of marked the experience of it.
It's a very profound thing. You realize that you're in the midst of something earth-shattering.
Yeah. But then after that, that's when I started feeling this kind of sense of relaxation and kind of calming sort of wash over me. And I immediately got this sense to just sort of observe. And usually, the best thing I could compare it to is this, because I really haven't done a lot of drugs. Again, the strongest thing I've done before this was weed. So it's when this, I started to feel really high briefly, and it almost was like this muscle memory, because I used to remember feeling like that when I smoked weed, and typically I would have to kind of be careful or whatnot because I would get too anxious or too introspective and whatever. I got a similar sort of feeling to that, but without the anxiety. It was like this, I felt I was becoming high, and I usually kind of hate losing control of what I perceive as my cognitive functions. And I became kind of more focused in and more dialed in. And immediately I was sitting down, I began to notice the ants crawling on the ground. And I began to, see these different sort of patterns. And it was almost like this, I'm trying to think of the right way to maybe describe this. It was almost like you are slowly opening a door a little bit, and it's not like this big abrupt thing that I thought it would be. It's like there's this steady sort of build-up, at least with my experience, that it's like I felt that I was entering some sort of other perceived reality or something like that. I wasn't quite all the way through it, and I think I preferred it like that because I almost like didn't. I was worried because I hate like mind-changing that sort of stuff, and I was kind of unprepared for that. I was kind of worried that I would feel anxiety about that, and I felt like this kind of gradual ease into this different sort of reality, and I began to take in this sort of perspective that was hard. It's hard to explain now after the fact, but it was like peeling away bits and pieces of our perceived senses. And from my own perspective, this is the best analogy I can give at this moment, but it was almost like peeling away different layers of code. Like if you were programming a game or something like that, you have to load in different shapes first, and then you paint over those shapes with textures, and then you have this different geometry that shows. And
that's a great analogy.
Well, with that, it was interesting. It was almost like you almost got to see that process sort of happening. Like, it was weird because because we see patterns in human behavior. We see patterns in everything. So that's like why I think stereotypes exist, is because we see certain pattern and our mind automatically associates that. But I almost saw each individual, like the rock and the sand and the ants and the sky, all these different separate individual things. It's hard to really explain, and it's really interesting how, because I usually pride myself on being able to articulately kind of convey my thoughts and feelings that as part of my job as an interviewer, and I have a hard time kind of really explaining it. And I don't even know if we have maybe the capacity, the words, and the vocabulary.
Well, you really don't. It's something that's very visual. Like, you see it, and of course we want to describe it to people,
right,
and who haven't seen it, but you can't. The way I have tried to articulate it is, in our everyday existence, we've got what we see here, right? A certain view of the world. And when you inhale DMT, that stays, right? But it becomes a much smaller part of what you're seeing. So everything gets much larger. Your perspective just increases dramatically, and everything gets brighter, more colorful. There's just more of the world. So in our everyday existence, we see certain things. When you do DMT, you see like a quantum leap more, and that includes spirits and patterns,
yeah.
So things just get bigger and brighter and better.
Well, it almost seemed like it was malleable in a way, at least in my perspective. And again, I didn't have like a full-on breakthrough, but it was it seemed like, and maybe this is my own perception of my own cognitive biases, I kind of have this sort of, I subscribe to the mindset that there's a good probability that we could be living in some sort of simulation. There could be, this is my perspective right now.
Sure.
I don't, this current moment or whatnot. I think when you have people like Elon Musk coming out and saying that the probability that we aren't is very low, and with the way virtual reality and VR has progressed to such an insane degree, I mean, if you look at that stuff 40 years ago, we were playing Pong.
Right.
Now we have stuff that is almost indistinguishable from virtual reality, like from real life. So I can imagine where we'll be in 40 years.
So, but let me just ask you the question then. How would you distinguish being in a simulation from being children of God? So basically, God created this simulation called reality. How could you possibly distinguish the two? And my feeling is that you can't.
Yeah, I don't think you can.
So we're in a simulation. It's just the simulation is being run by God.
Right.
It's not being run by some kid in his basement on a computer.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense to me. And, of course, anything that would create this hypothetical simulation would be nothing less than God itself, really, to
Right.
us. So
Right, exactly.
Which I find really interesting. And
Oh, and you know what? And that leads me to an important point that I'm not sure I've made before. So there are certain questions like, does God exist? And then once you realize, yes, God does exist, then the question becomes, well, where is God? And who created God? And that seems like an impossible question to answer. But what happens is when you go into these other dimensions, those questions become moot. Like there is a way to explain the origin and the persistence of the universe in these other dimensions. And when you get there, it all makes sense. And I've seen like glimpses of it, but I can't remember exactly how to articulate it. But the overwhelming sense is that I think when you die, you basically merge with God, and then you can see how it all works, and it all makes sense. Things that seem impossible right now to understand or describe become like very simple and clear.
Yeah, that's always kind of been, I guess, because I've always sort of, like, for example, like my own anecdotal evidence perspective right now is that my reviews on religion and spirituality and that sort of stuff haven't changed. It's only kind of given more almost evidence to like reinforce those sort of beliefs, which is kind of a crazy feeling in a weird way. It's like, yeah, I always kind of entertain the idea, like, yeah, it could be possible that we're living in a simulation. I mean, there's some weird inconsistencies with stuff like that, with like, have you heard of Mandela effects and that sort of thing?
So let's suss that out a little bit. When you're saying living in a simulation, are you thinking that we're in some two-dimensional computer projection? Like, where exactly is the simulation occurring?
I use the word simulation because I don't know a better way to describe it that exists in our world right now. It doesn't necessarily mean it's run by a computer, but
because, for example, when Elon Musk talks about a simulation, he's talking about a computer program that's projecting an image onto a screen, basically. So essentially, you can almost think of our visual cortex as being the screen upon which this simulation is being projected. So then the question becomes, okay, where's the hardware? Who's producing the simulation? And I'm saying that the hardware is our brains. That's the hardware. And the simulation is being produced by God, sending basically streaming video into our heads. Those are the ideas that we have, and the physical outside world that we perceive. All of that is detected by light waves bouncing off of whatever's out in the real world. So the simulation theory suggests that a computer program is being run in our brains and creating this vision for us. And I'm saying, no, the vision is coming from outside. All of it's coming from outside. Yeah,
I think I agree with that. That's kind of how I always saw it. I didn't think, it's weird to me because it's like, and again, to the point I was making earlier, where it's like I always kind of assumed that we were living in a simulation, then taking that, ingesting that DMT vapor or whatnot, and actually seeing what I maybe perceive as more evidence towards that is a weird feeling.
Yes,
it's like,
I agree.
oh my God.
I went through that.
We really are.
Absolutely. That was my first thinking, like, holy crap, we're in a simulation.
So it's really interesting, and I feel, one of my bigger worries about doing DMT was that I wouldn't be the same person coming back, and I feel I am the same person now. I've had a different life experience, or I have a different sort of perspective, and it's
a bigger perspective.
It's a bigger perspective, and it's not some sort of drug it's not even a drug. It's not some sort of substance that is going to affect you in a way that, like, meth or heroin or cocaine or alcohol or anything like that does, where
it's not
there's no high to it.
Right.
There's no recreational value to it. There's just more of a broadening of the mindset, which I think is really interesting. And I don't know. I mean,
it's the ultimate learning experience.
So I guess maybe that leads me to another question: is that what do you think the purpose right now? And this doesn't, I'm sure my perspective will for sure change as I get older and that sort of stuff. But what do you think right now, if your theory is correct about living in a simulation, what do you think? Is there a specific point to it? Is there a meaning behind it? Is there some sort of greater sort of experiment being run? Or
once you realize that God exists, God is the creator of the simulation. God exists. God didn't create us to be in conflict or to be stressed out. Clearly, the intention is to have fun, lead a fulfilling, honest, good life, exemplary life. Be kind to other people, be compassionate, and it's to have fun and be creative. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that in the world that God created all this so that we could be stressed out about our jobs or live a life without purpose. That's definitely not the case. So it's have fun, be creative, enable other people to experience joy and fun and if you're talking to someone who's fearful about the world or stressed out, do whatever you can to make them less fearful and stressed out. Basically, be nice to your everyone you meet.
Yeah. It's almost, to me, I can see how this would be therapeutic in terms of combating depression and anxiety, because even though I may not have had a breakthrough, I can kind of start to see the appeal of like, okay, I've gotten a glimpse into something that has been like redefining of my perception of what reality is. I want to find out more. I want to acquire more knowledge. I want to dive deeper into it.
Yes.
So I definitely see the appeal there. Now, the inverse of that, or the maybe duality of that, do you think that there could be a threshold on how much you should, as a human, dive into that and explore that before it becomes maybe all-consuming? Like if you, for example, take something, this is my best attempt to relate to this, but maybe take something like marijuana or weed. Someone likes smoking weed because it helps their anxiety. I dated a girl like this for a while. She had really bad anxiety. It helped her kind of calm down, kind of helped her deal with trauma. It kind of put stuff in perspective for her. It didn't necessarily have any great intellectual awakenings in her, but it was something that she inadvertently sort of based her life around. I mean, it's not like alcohol where it could affect, your job or anything like that. She held down a steady job, and she, paid all her bills, everything like that. But she did revolve around this drug. Do you think there is the capacity, even though I wouldn't say it is recreational by any stretch of the means, do you think there is a capacity maybe to have a similar fallacy where someone gets so into DMT or focused into it so much that they neglect all the other real world possibilities?
No, I think that's a very important question to ask, and the answer is no. So in the past, let's say 9 months, I've inhaled DMT probably 500 times or so.
That's a lot.
So sometimes like up to 10 times a day. And then people say, oh, you're obviously addicted. No, it's like the opposite of addiction. When you don't need to do it or want to do it. Mm-hmm. But so then you ask yourself, when you do DMT, you see more and more of the world. You have a much larger perspective. I mean, once you've done DMT, when you look at people who haven't done it, you just see this tiny little world that they exist in. And people become quite easy to manipulate if you want them. And it becomes a real responsibility to use the powers that you gain with DMT only as a force for good. Because if a bad person starts doing it, they can manipulate other people and have them do bad things, and that's a scary thing, right? You don't want to do that.
Well, I'm sure there's some bad people that have for sure done DMT.
Sure.
They probably hold very high positions of power.
Absolutely, there's no question about that. But so then, once you realize that you only see more of the world and have greater insights and have a better understanding of what reality is all about, why would you not want to do that as much as possible? I want to know more and more about our world, not less and less.
Yeah, but I guess I could see how that would be addicting, though. In a way, that quest for more knowledge.
Is waking up in the morning addicting? I mean, people.
Yeah.
You can't see the world without waking up.
That's true.
And that's you've heard the phrase, of course, like woke, people who are woke.
Unfortunately,
and what it really is people who realize, okay, this is how the universe works. Jim Carrey talks a lot about not being afraid to ask the universe for what you want, and it will give you what you want. If you got good intentions, like all your dreams will come true. So a woke person are people who, they got it. Whatever it is, for me it was DMT that allowed me to see it. Other people have other experiences. And now I'm woke, like I get it. And I want more of it. I want more people to see how it really is. Because just imagine if everyone on earth understood that they have a purpose and that life's a beautiful thing and that you should be curious and take chances and things will only get more and more beautiful. And if everybody knew that, just imagine what a wonderful world it would be. And that's going to happen soon, I think.
Do you think that...
So, Adam, maybe, you know what, Neptune's Net, that restaurant up here? Maybe we'll stop there, we'll overlook the surfers, get a lobster or something. So this is where the fire ripped through. Remember?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Malibu fire last year? Burned all the way to the water here.
Wow.
It's coming back though. So when I was doing Ironman races, triathlons, when I was living down in Hermosa, every weekend we'd come up here Saturdays and Sundays. Usually Saturdays we do like a 120-mile ride. Sundays like an 80-mile ride. So I was one of these guys on my bike every weekend for several years in a row.
It's a much more entertaining bike ride, I feel like, than where I'm from. So it's pretty dreary over
pretty
there.
ideal place to work at. Yeah, it's another maybe 4 or 5 miles. And then we can actually take Cane and Dune Road over to 101.
It's in the back.
Or there's another one up here that goes up to Calabasas to 101. Mulholland. Mulholland comes up here.
Comes up here.
Yep.
So I see a lot of people, whether they're just playing into the meme of it or not, kind of referring to you as this sort of God. And I think I get correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I see the perspective that each of us is our own sort of God in that some sort of way. It's not meant to be like you are the one kind of person. No. But you mentioned you're placed in this really interesting position, I feel like, where you have all these people. A lot of them are kids, by kids I mean maybe like teenagers and young adults. And are you ever tempted at all to use that sort of power for more selfish or whatever reasons, or is it strictly altruistic? Because for me, I mean, you've flown me out here, you've put me up in a hotel, it's been an interesting kind of day or so, and I had this really cool experience that is beginning to be life-changing, I think. So from my perspective, there's no in any kind of selfish way at all in there. It's interesting how you kind of have framed that way.
Well, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to be famous.
Yeah.
And I'm a natural leader, so I'm looking forward to leading a revolution for peace around the world. I'm ready to sort of, take the mantle and do that. So in that sense, yes, I do have some sort of selfish motives, really. I guess because I don't see anyone else doing it, so I kind of feel like I have the wherewithal now to do it, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I want to see what that feels like. But some people refer to me as like egomaniacal, and it does take an ego to do that. But my intentions really are good, and the more people that I can get to see what I'm seeing, and we talked about this earlier, I want other people to be able to talk as forcefully about this as I am, because the more people who are talking about that, it sort of takes the burden off me, and then I want to focus on. I really want to get in a new relationship, and so. But I am looking forward to being a leader in this area, definitely.
Yeah, someone had to step up to the plate.
Right, exactly. Right.
It's interesting to sort of see that. it's cool to kind of be here and talk with you about this stuff. It's really interesting to kind of get a chance to sit down with you and really explore this sort of stuff with you.
It's fun.
It is, yeah, it's very fun. It's, I had a great question. I forget what.
So this, right after this, we go up around the hill, and then there's a restaurant right up to the right. And this Mulholland comes in right down here.
Let me think a little bit more. Let's stop here and get some lobsters or something like
Sure.
that, and then we can resume this. But
Are you okay with that, Adam? You have time?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yep.